Hey guys, and welcome to the 5th episode of the things you may have missed in Genshin Impact. Last time, we discussed about some interesting facts about Venti. If you missed it, you can find a link down in the description below. For our next character to be featured, we will be talking about none other than our boy, Childe.
Yo, what up, girly? It's your boy, Childe!
Or formerly known as the 11th Harbinger of the Fatui Tortoise? Anyway, my friend and I made a bet that when I got him, I would make a video about him. Unfortunately, the bet is still going on and I just really want to share some interesting facts about him. Now, I want to give a huge thanks to Facepalm III for sharing our Dragon Spine video, and another huge thanks to the latest subscribers of our channel. It was a huge boost for us to keep making these videos and sharing some interesting things and facts about Genshin Impact. Right, now let's get on with our 7 interesting facts that you may have missed about Childe. Starting off with number 1, the name Tartaglia was from Commedia dell'arte. Now before you ask what it is, have you ever noticed that all the names of the Harbingers are Italian? For example, Dottore, Scaramouche, Signora, and Tartaglia. That's because they were all names used in the Commedia dell'arte, or also known as Italian comedy. Now, Commedia dell'arte was a theatrical presentation performed in the 16th century. It was performed by professional actors that traveled across Italy. It is kinda similar to circus groups now, but they performed it in opera-like style with masks that portray different kinds of personalities. Commedia dell'arte is still being performed today, but most of its purest form was lost to history books. Its influence is still widely felt today in all forms of theater, and much of it is recaptured and brought back to its former glory. Back to the name Tartaglia. It is used as a name for a minor character who is farsighted and has a minor stutter, hence why he is also called as the Stutterer. Tartaglia is described to wear a large felt hat, an enormous cloak, and oversized boots. It doesn't really reflect his appearance from the game. I mean, he does wear a cloak and maybe an oversized pair of boots, but it would be interesting if MiHoYo added a large felt hat, right? I kinda imagined him to look like a gunslinger from the West. Now, additionally, Tartaglia has a certain design for their mask. As shown from the image, it is portrayed as dainty and gaunt, which makes Tartaglia look thin and clumsy, which is different from his mask in the game. Next on our list, let's jump on to thing number 2. The origins of his birth name, Ajax. Before he was known as Childe or Tortuga, as what the Fatui calls him, he is named as Ajax. Starting from his character's story, he used to go ice fishing with his father at Snezhnaya. They would sit beside the holes they cut open from frozen lakes. You know, father-son bonding moment. While waiting, his father would tell Ajax these incredible adventures he had when he was young. Ajax was amazed and wanted to be in one of his father's adventures. He eventually came of age and left his home and his family. As he left home, Childe would always take the opportunity to train, hone his abilities, and reflect on his battles. Thus the reason why he is one of the strongest Harbingers despite being the youngest among them. Now in a more historical point of view, his birth name Ajax came from a Greek hero who fought in the Trojan War. Ajax the Great was a prince from Salamis and considered to be a great warrior. He is described to be the tallest among the heroes who fought in the Trojan War, standing like a man-mountain amongst the Greeks. Ajax the Great would fight alongside his half-brother, Teucer, who is a great archer back in their days. Ajax and Teucer had incredible chemistry during the war. Teucer would fire his arrows from behind, while Ajax charges into groups of enemies with his might. Their brotherly bond would be broken shortly after the death of Achilles. Ajax then committed suicide when he lost to Odysseus after deciding who would retrieve the body of Achilles. It was a big deal for Ajax because he didn't want to lose against the other Greek heroes. Following the tragic death of Ajax, Teucer continued on to lead the rest of his comrades and eventually win the war against Troy. After the war ended, Teucer and his army would not encounter any dangers going home. Compare that to Odysseus, who had a hard time. And so that is all I have for number 2. Moving on to the thing you may have missed, number 3, the critical encounter of Childe when he was young. Okay, so when Childe was about 14 years old, he made a decision that he wasn't expecting to be this big impact on his future. He ran away from his home. Yeah, Childe went away with nothing but a short sword and a bag of bread. Eventually, he got lost in the snow and dark forest somewhere in Snezhnaya. Now, to be fair, he didn't actually think this through. So, when he got lost, he stumbled across a mysterious swordswoman. This swordswoman then taught him how to pass through the so-called abyss and nurtured his ability to stir havoc like what he did later in his life. You know, when he caused havoc in Liyue. Okay, so at that time, Childe and the mysterious swordswoman stayed in the forest for 3 months. Childe would never speak of what really happened during those 3 months ever again. It's just that when his parents found him, it is said that only 3 days had passed in their world. Now, when I read this, I immediately thought of Narnia and imagined Childe to be walking through the snow, eventually meeting a white witch, but in this case, a swordswoman. I kinda want to believe this is where Mihoyo based Childe's backstory from. Anyway, shocked by what his parents told him, his experience would then mark the end of his youth and beginning his days as a warrior, eventually getting enlisted in the Fatui and getting noticed by a Harbinger. Now, let's get on to thing you may have missed, number 4, how Childe became a Harbinger. Okay, so let us continue from where we left off. Back from his adventure with the mysterious swordswoman, his views eventually changed because he was no longer frightened easily and would get too confident at times. He became more self-centered and would often get into fights and quarrels. By the time his father had enough, he decided to send Childe to enlist to the Fatui. Talk about a child gone bad, am I right? He eventually started his path to being a Harbinger. During his training, his father hoped that Childe would eventually get disciplined by the Fatui. However, he got disappointed again when he watched Childe beat up fully armed troops getting beaten up. It wasn't the same case, however, for Pulcinella, the 5th Harbinger of the Fatui. Pulcinella noticed Childe's potential combined with his strength, passion, and desire to do everything. Pulcinella then inducted Childe and ordering him to take up the duties serving the Tsaritsa. Starting from the bottom, Childe eventually made it to the top, and was chosen to be one of the Fatui Harbingers, a powerful position in Snezhnaya, becoming the youngest of the Harbingers and donning the hardest name to pronounce, Tartaglia. And number 6 that you may have missed is the delusion of Childe. As of now, we talked about Childe's progression and his rise from the ranks of the Fatui. But how did he get to acquire an electro delusion? For those unfamiliar, a delusion is like the opposite of a vision. It's kinda like a Star Wars situation where there's a good side and a dark side. So, if you have a pyro vision, you may end up getting a dendro delusion or a cryo delusion. I'm not sure whether this is the case. All I read is that it's a different element from the one they have now. Also, using a delusion takes much more energy and ultimately wears up the body if used too much, unlike a vision. Now back to the topic. Childe got his delusion from the first Fatui Harbinger, Pedrelino. He remembers every part of how Pedrelino personally pinned an insignia onto him. Childe considers his delusion as a proof of his strength and an ode to fealty to his Tsaritsa. We still have no details about Pedrelino's character, but I can imagine his appearance as this old and professional character with like a monocle and a cane. And so that is it for this thing that you may have missed. At number 6, Childe is both a Cyclops and a Narwhal. Now, let us delve into his appearance as a Harbinger. I mentioned earlier that his name Ajax came from a Greek tale, but how about his constellation and his final appearance? Spoiler ahead for those who haven't yet finished Act 1. During the battle with Childe, after beating him twice, he eventually takes on his foul legacy transformation. In the middle of his mask, we can see a blue orb glass which could be a representation of an eye. Now maybe you're wondering why just one eye? Well, because much like how his name Ajax came from a Greek epic, his appearance also came from a creature in a Greek tale. Cyclopses are described to be one-eyed giant creatures and are written to build massive walls of ancient cities. Hence why Cyclopean means wailing of which the stones are not squared. As for his constellation, Monoceros Caeli, its Latin meaning is the unicorn, which is a symbol of otherworldliness. With some quick reads from the internet, the word Monoceros comes as a narwhal or a narwhale. This can explain as to why Childe can summon a huge whale during the fight scene. Finally, let's get on to the 7th thing you may have missed. How Childe gives importance to his family. It's safe to say that Childe isn't just a villain that battles for the sake of the Tsaritsa. He also cares for his family, thus why he wants to keep his Harbinger status a secret. This is shown from his story quest where he doesn't tell Tusser about his Harbinger stories. So, why doesn't he? It is because Childe wants to save his family without making them know he faces risks. He wants to save his family from the destruction that is about to happen in Teyvat. He fights for hope so that he can bring a future to them. So now, I want to give you a couple more bonus ones. For bonus number 1, for Childe's last basic attack, he throws his arrow. Now, I wouldn't actually know much more about this because I haven't got him yet. But yeah, it appears he does throw his arrow instead of using his bow, considering the fact that he mastered using all weapons except the bow. I mean, it's not necessarily a good thing, but that's just what makes it a detail. The next bonus thing is that Childe's voice actor in Japanese is Ryohei Kimura. Now again, I'm a huge fan of Haikyuu, and it's just funny to think that the boss I fight every week is this. So anyway, that was all I have for this episode. Now if you have some thoughts about the video, leave a comment and let us know. Also, if you missed any of these things, or if you want to add more that I haven't mentioned, share it down. If you like this video, leave a like, and if you're not yet subscribed, it would be a great time to do so. We will be uploading another video about Zhongli and more interesting details. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. So, as usual, until the next one, be safe and stay tuned.